Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me on another episode of F is for Effort. I'm Jack Hayden. Okay, so today, what I'd like to cover and talk about is the job interview process and how stressful it can be for so many. I know I've had my share of job interviews, and I gotta tell you, each one is always different because you interview with so many different people, you have so many different personalities and vibes, and so it's always a different experience. How many of you out there have interviewed many times and walk away with a different outcome each time? So that's what I've experienced. So therefore, today, that's what I'm talking about. And one in particular, one that went in such a different direction that it left me shocked and surprised and angry at the same time. Okay, so my experience happened about a year ago when an external recruiter contacted me because he saw my profile on LinkedIn and he felt that I was a good candidate for a job that he had with a particular employer. So he contacts me, wants to set up a call with me, and wants to tell me more about this position. So I agree, and we get on a phone call. He talks about the position, tells me about the company, and he thinks that I'm a good fit for it. And after his description of the position, I also agreed that I could be a good candidate for this role. So he then tells me that he wants to present me to the manager of the company, and then he'll be in contact later on about any possible next steps. So I agree, and we end the call there. Well, about a day or so later, he contacts me and says that everything's good, and the manager is excited about interviewing me and getting to know me better. So we set up an interview time so that I can meet with the manager. And he tells me that it'll be a Zoom virtual interview call. So I'm all for it. And I go ahead and make sure that I'm all prepared for it. And when I get on the call, I meet with the manager, and he seems very pleasant right off the bat. He's very polite. He's smiling and everything's going well. He makes me feel comfortable. And he starts talking to me about what the position's about and the company. And he tells me what his role is and what the department overall does that he oversees. And I then present myself by telling him about my skills and prior experience. And in particular, I talk about my previous position that I last held with a different company. So he's very engaged. He likes what I'm saying. He asks me a few questions, and everything is flowing. Everything's going well. Everything seems to be on a positive note. And I don't have any indication on my end that he looks like he's not liking me or that the interview is not going well. So far, everything is a green light for me. So then he tells me that he's going to be in contact with the recruiter and that I'll be notified by the recruiter about the next steps in the process. So I thank him for his time and we end the call. Well, about a day or so later, the recruiter contacts me and he says that the manager liked me and would like me to go into the office for an in-person interview. So I agreed. Everything so far for me is a go. But the only follow-up information that the recruiter gave me was that the manager had discussed with him that there was a sort of a red flag concern that he had that he picked up when I was talking to him on the interview. And that was a certain job function that I held in my previous job that he felt was unrealistic for just myself to have been assigned to. Because I guess he was familiar with that specific role, that task, that he felt it was too overwhelming for just one person to handle. So he felt that I was inaccurate, or maybe I was exaggerating on the things that I did in my previous position. So I was a little surprised to hear that, because he never gave me any indication that he had any concerns about what I was saying, and he never asked any follow-up questions in regards to that specific topic that I had covered. So I was a little surprised about what the recruiter had told me. But I let it go, and I felt that I could perhaps clarify that when I met with him next on this next interview. So we went ahead and scheduled the next follow up interview that was supposed to be in person, and everything's go for that. So I drive over to the office on the day of the interview and I meet with him in person. He greets me, he gives me a firm handshake, and he walks me over to his office. And I sit down and he informs me that the director of finance will be talking with me, but he has to join via a Zoom call because he wasn't in the office at that time and was out on location at a different job site for the company. So it's no big deal to me. I was totally prepared to talk to whoever, whether it was on Zoom or in person. So he went ahead and he connected on the Zoom call on his computer, and the director was there and ready. And he immediately starts to talk to me and ask me questions. And this director was a little bit more straight faced. So therefore, he got right down to it and was asking me questions about my previous experience and job functions and all. So I did the best I could. I went ahead and I answered everything as detailed as possible. And at that moment, I took the opportunity to further elaborate on the details about that specific job function the manager had concerns on, just so that there wouldn't be any more confusion or concerns regarding that task. And the call only lasted about 15 minutes, but he seemed to have all of his questions answered. And he just told me that he would discuss any further next steps with the manager and that they would let me know. So I thanked him for his time, and the manager then exited the call, which then left just the two of us to discuss anything further that we needed to still talk about or clarify. But this guy was very pleasant. He was really nice. He just made me feel comfortable. So I really felt at ease talking with him, and conversation was just flowing naturally. He told me that there was another colleague that I was supposed to have met that day of the interview, but he had forgotten that that person was out on vacation at that time, so therefore wasn't available to meet up with me. So he discussed about possibly setting up another interview in the near future for me to come back in so that I could meet this colleague, because apparently I would be working side by side with this person. So that to me was good. Then he just further goes into policies, and he touched base on their policy on a hybrid schedule for the position. Their hybrid schedule was 3 days in the office, 2 days working from home each week. I had no problem with that because that seems to be the general policy that seems to be going around to all companies. I told him that I was okay with that. The only side note that I had for him was that in my previous position, I experienced a different policy because management there at my previous organization felt that their employees were more productive when they actually worked from home versus in the office, only because there were simply more distractions in the office at any given time when people were trying to get their work done. You get those people that walk up to your desk and they ask you questions and completely throw you off track from what you were doing. And therefore, sometimes you don't get as much work done when you're in the office versus when you're just focused and by yourself working from home. And that was the viewpoint that my previous employer had. So I just felt that I could relay that because since he told me their viewpoint was people were more productive in the office versus at home, I just felt it was a little funny that I had experienced something different previously. So I just told him about that. I wanted to make conversation. I wanted things to just keep going with us and feel more at ease. I wanted him to like me and I liked him. So it was easy for me to talk to him. Well, at one point, he then kind of made a weird comment to me that at first didn't strike any red flags in me, but now looking back on it, okay, maybe it was an indication that things weren't really going so well based on what I was saying. He mentioned that the policy there was that people were working 3 days in the office and 2 days at home. And I told him, okay, well, I was fine with that. And then we just kept the conversation going. So then he continued to mention that he wanted to schedule another interview to be able to have me come in and meet this colleague that I would be working side by side in the possible future. So I agreed and we left it at that. So he walks me out of the office and we shake hands, and he says that he'll be in contact through the recruiter to schedule the next step. So I'm excited. I thank him for his time and I leave. Well, a few days go by from that interview, and I had not heard anything from anybody. I didn't receive any email or phone call from the recruiter about scheduling any next interview. So I went ahead and I gave the recruiter a phone call and left him a voicemail asking him when the next interview would be scheduled. So a short time later, he gives me a call back and informs me that the manager had decided not to proceed forward with my application and was going in a different direction with a different candidate. So when he told me that, I was totally shocked and didn't understand what changed things so drastically, especially when I left the office. Everything seemed to be so positive, and he even told me that he was looking forward to scheduling another interview so that I can come back in and meet the other colleague. So I asked him, was there anything else that he learned as to why I wasn't proceeding forward? And then he told me that the manager had discussed with him that I was constantly asking if the hybrid schedule could be changed or possibly altered to allow more days from home, as I felt that I would be more productive at home than being in an office. And when he said that, I was speechless. I didn't know what to say, only because I was completely shocked that he had told the recruiter this when it was not accurate. It was totally taken out of context. It was totally misunderstood. And my intention in discussing what I had experienced previously was only to make conversation. It wasn't to try to persuade him or make him change the policy so that way I would be allowed more time working from home than in the office. That was never the intention, nor did I ever state that. But somehow he told the recruiter that I had asked multiple times about being allowed to work from home more than 2 days a week. So I was completely thrown off guard by that comment. And I told the recruiter that that was not accurate. I told him exactly what I had told the manager, and that I was just merely pointing a fact about what my previous employer had determined about their hybrid schedule and making it mostly remote versus a true hybrid, 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. That's all I was trying to get across and make conversation. But this manager somehow misinterpreted my conversation into being something that I was trying to persuade him to change policy. And that just was not accurate. So that angered me, only because as I sat there and I spoke to him, he never indicated or voiced any concerns about what I was saying. He just went with it, and he made that comment about policy being 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, but he never followed up with asking me to clarify if I was asking him to change policy or anything in that regard. He never asked for any clarification. He never followed up with any further questions. He just simply sat there, listened to me, but at the same time was always very pleasant, engaged, and just continued conversation. So if he had these red flag concerns, I would have wished he would have asked me at that time so that way I could have clarified what I was really trying to get across, instead of just being polite to me and telling me that he was going to get with the recruiter to get on the next steps. So given that whole outcome of what he had told the recruiter, I then told him that this job wasn't for me either, because after having been misunderstood twice now by this manager, there's no way that I would feel comfortable having accepted a job there and working with this manager, given that even during the interview process, he misunderstood me twice. So I couldn't imagine working there day to day and how that would have gone. So I was in a way glad that the outcome happened the way it did because it saved me from having to get involved in this company that I probably would have been miserable at. So that was my experience in this particular round of job interviews that I went through with this one particular company. And I still can't figure out how it was that this one manager misunderstood me so much that he felt I was trying to get him to change and reconsider the hybrid policy. All in all, though, I'm glad I didn't end up an employee of that company. So, how many of you have gone through a similar experience with any type of job interview you've had in the past? One where you feel like you're presenting yourself in the best way and you're just trying to make conversation, and the interviewer takes everything the wrong way or misunderstands and takes it the wrong way and decides to not proceed forward with you because of what you said or what you stated you had done in your previous experience or job roles. It can be frustrating because you never know who this person who's interviewing you is going to take or understand what you're saying or describing during your interview. Okay, so what are the takeaways from what I just shared? Well, to the job candidates out there, just continue to be yourselves during the interview because it's going to be too difficult to try to predict or tailor your conversation based on what you think the interviewer wants to hear. So it's best just to show up for an interview, be your best self, be professional, and if the manager or whoever's interviewing you has any red flags or concerns about you and doesn't ask additional questions to get a good understanding and doesn't select you for the job, it's probably for the best because you probably wouldn't want to work there anyway. And for all you managers out there that are interviewing candidates, please be professional enough to clarify and further ask any questions to these candidates based on what they're saying if you see or hear any concerns or red flags that you may encounter throughout the interview. These candidates are there trying to present themselves as best they can and be as professional as possible. They're not there to waste their time or yours. So please be respectful of their time and make sure you have a clear understanding of the candidate before discarding them based on your assumptions. And for the job seekers out there going through many interviews and get rejected, remember that everything happens for a reason and for your best interest. And keep in mind that it's failed effort, life lived. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you got something out of my interview experience. Please don't forget to follow me on this podcast. I'm Jack Hayden. Until next time.